See, I told everyone that I'm quackers.
Good morning, good evening. Hello to everyone, everywhere. Welcome back. This is part 8 of the Prometheus build. It's been something of an epic journey indirectly in terms of personal health and so on and so forth. But I'm hoping to make a decent fist of it and make something of a comeback, so to speak. I can only apologise to those who have subscribed to my channel. I've been absent for so long and my contribution's been so intermittent, so I apologise to you good folks who've tuned into my channel. Hopefully there's going to be quite an adventure ahead in terms of my plans for this channel and various builds and whatnot. So I hope you will all stick around for that. Right then, as I was saying, this is part 8, a return to the Prometheus build. Excuse the long pause. None of this is scripted. I'm doing this ad hoc, so to speak. In episode 7, or part 7 I should say really, I was discussing how I intended to construct Meredith Vickers' EEV, or lifeboat. In part 7 I was showing you how I intended to mount magnets on the inside of the lifeboat and then the underside of the upper fuselage of the Prometheus itself. Well, I've done that now, so if I carefully remove this with my Tamiya scriber, because these magnets are quite strong, there we go. So you can see that this now is a complete unit, and I filled in the thruster assemblies with Milliput because if they were built open, obviously I wouldn't be able to dock this feature. You may wonder why I went through the trouble of magnetizing this element and keeping it as a separate item. It's just another feature that I thought would be nice to incorporate in terms of this model's build. It's nice to incorporate as many features as possible, and if you don't have to glue something, then I won't necessarily do it. So the cradle, I call it the cradle, where the EV nestles in rather snugly, has been sanded and contoured, so I've almost got a seamless continuity in terms of the two fuselage upper halves of the Prometheus. Also, the auxiliary intakes, they've been glued using epoxy resin. Underneath because underneath was quite hollow, I filled with Milliput, and I've also contoured the Milliput so that it blends with the surrounding area of the fuselage. These auxiliary intakes, they actually help with the model's structural integrity because they bridge the two halves. So not only are the two halves of the fuselage bound together, so to speak, I now have these auxiliary intakes that basically reinforces the structural integrity of the model. So what I'm hoping to do also is retool this detail. I might hollow it all out and then scratch build those parts with styrene stock. I haven't quite got there in terms of what I want to do, whether I want to persist with the detail that I have here or scratch it and start anew. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how things move along that way. Right, so I'm going to lift this up here, and I don't know if the camera can focus it, probably not, but just let me move that out of the way a minute. So if I tilt this slightly, you can see where I've used the Milliput to blend the surface of the auxiliary intake and the fuselage of the Prometheus. So it's a proper belt and braces job, really. So you've got the strength of the intakes plus the Milliput, and the underside has been reinforced with acrylic. So this is an acrylic plate. Yeah, so I've just built so much into the structural integrity of this kit. She's not going to suddenly, how can I say, fall apart, break apart, come undone. It's not going to happen. These fixtures are pretty much you know, forever, so to speak, in terms of their durability, their homogeneity and lifespan. In this little block, this is a block of Milliput. I've embedded the magnet. Now the magnet aids with the attachment of the EV. So the EV itself is magnetized, and there's a magnet embedded in some Milliputs on the inside of the fuselage. Here is more Milliput. Now in previous videos I've discussed my application of Milliput and why I use it in this manner, because Milliput is a product that basically I cannot do without in terms of my modelling, because it's such a tough medium, and this is the grey-green Milliput, and it's rock hard. It really hardens to a consistency of rock. The beauty of Milliput is that you can use it as a filler, you can use it as a sculpting medium, you can patch things up with it, the application of Milliput in this instance is to reinforce the inner and outer shell of the Prometheus, because I've discussed previously that this section along the forward fuselage is a little bit on the thin side, and I didn't want to have a catastrophic accident whereby I stuck my thumb, finger or a sculpting tool through that, because it would potentially be very, very difficult to replicate this very, very fine detail. Again, it's some sort of vent or heat sink detail here. It's very fine. So I'm not being negative, and I'm not having a whinge. And if you buy a garage kit or a resin model, it's something that comes with the territory. It's something of an expectation, and through experience you get better at seeing what needs to be applied in these circumstances. The command module, the bridge, I've temporarily tacked on with superglue. I hope I haven't used too much superglue, because it might be a bit of a issue to remove if that superglue is really taken. As I said, I just used a spot really, and the reason why I did this is because I am now looking at scribing the kit. It's a case of do I scribe or don't I scribe, but we'll talk about that in a second. Move this to the side. Okay. Now everybody knows that this is the underside of the Prometheus, the lower fuselage. These vent details, I don't think the camera can pick these out as such, because the light might be a bit too bright. But this area here has been blended into the forward section of the fuselage. I've used a lot of resin. I let the resin seep out to create a natural filler, if that makes sense. It just reduces the need to use Milliput in this instance. So I let the resin seep out, and when it cured, I just lightly sanded it back so it was flush with the surrounding area. When we get around to painting, it is my hope that the blending and the merging of the surfaces will be pretty much seamless. I mean, if I have to sand over them again, I'll have to do that. I'll just have to get on with it, so to speak. What intrigues me about this area, and it's not just the Prometheus, you get this in other model kits as well, and I've often spoken about tension and counter tension in model kits, and in most circumstances for me, the tension and counter tension actually works, because while you've secured one half of a part that's being glued in situ, the tension counter tension actually helps in terms of strapping and holding these parts in place. And also being fairly thin in terms of the other parts of the models, because the areas are quite thick, but these are actually quite thin. So they've been bolstered and reinforced with Milliput, styrene and resin. So this is now pretty tough, and the reason why I've really applied a lot of how can I say, I'm lost for words. Basically what I'm saying is, I've built this in such a way, or I constructed this part in such a way so that it won't warp and it won't twist and buckle. And especially as obviously the upper fuselage of the Prometheus is going to be attached to this section, any tension or counter tension will be nullified by the mating of the two surfaces, so that's going to be rock solid. So all those diametrically opposing structural forces will be compacted and bound into the kit's construction. I'm not a structural engineer, so it might sound like a whole load of waffle. Right, okay. Okay, we're back. Along the side here of the fuselage, you can see where I've used the Milliput to build up the side panels or the walls of the Prometheus. It's filled in the gaps here beautifully. And as I was saying, the auxiliary vent or heat sink detail here has been blended in to the lower half of the fuselage. This area is quite thin, as I was describing, and is under tension. So using that tension and counter tension, I've managed to secure that in place. Tension and counter tension in the model can actually be advantageous to the modeler. But yes, I've allowed the epoxy resin glue to seep through here, and it's acted as a natural filler. I might be repeating myself. So this area obviously by no means is finished or complete, and this is because I'll need to fill in the various gaps that you can still see, and also this area is going to be further enhanced with additional detail referring to Ben Proctor's CG renderings. This adjoining area here, you can see how there was a gap in that part had either come out during production or just was too thin and it's just flaked away without my noticing. But it's not a complaint. I'm not whinging. It's done, and it's all the more stronger for it. On the bow of the Prometheus, you can see where I've mapped out this area, and I've had this long debate in terms of whether or not to scribe, because I had attempted it previously. If you look back in episode, when was it, 2, 3, 4 maybe, but if you look back in those episodes, I tried to scribe the detail into these engine pods, and in the end I had to scrap that idea because I was very heavy-handed in terms of applying that detail, and also that detail is so fine that my effort really didn't look as though it was in proportion with this, in scale, or it didn't blend well with the aesthetic that I was trying to achieve. So this area, I think I will attempt that paneling with paint as opposed to scribing the surface, which I've since filled, obviously. Getting back to the Prometheus proper, so to speak, or the fuselage, I have decided to scribe the detail. If you refer to Ben Proctor's illustrations of the Prometheus or the Magellan, you can see how she's very, very heavily panelled, and beautifully panelled, to be more exact. The CG renderings are absolutely stunning, and you can just look over and over and over again and still find something entirely new to look at. So I'm going to the source in terms of applying the detail to this model. I have an item, a modelling accessory actually, which I'll just show you. So if you just bear with me literally a couple of seconds, I'll be right back. Okay, this is the scribing accessory that I'm going to be using on the Prometheus. It's from Element Tools, and basically it's a scribing tape. It's rigid enough to, how can I say, it's rigid enough so that you don't misscribe or go off the rails in terms of applying your detail, but flexible enough to contour the compound and parabolic surfaces of such an intricate model. So I thought, yes, this is really quite ideal in terms of its application, and I'm looking forward to applying this to the Prometheus, because I think it's really going to be useful in that respect. So what I will do basically is finish detailing the surfaces of the Prometheus, and then having done that, I'll lay down the scribing tape to further apply that detail. So it's map out those panels in pencil, apply the scribing tape, scribe, job done. This is, you're probably wondering what this, actually you probably can see what it is actually, but this is one of my scribing tools. This is a Tamiya scribing tool, and it's very sharp. It's very robust as well. I have another scribing tool. I can't remember what brand this is. It's really quite heavy, and I've had this for a number of years, and it's still very sharp. I mean, this thing can scribe brass, metal, wood, anything really. It's really quite robust, but it is very heavy, and that sort of heaviness, combined with my being heavy-handed anyway, is not really conducive to such fine detail, and that's why I bought this Tamiya scriber, basically, because it's lighter, it's far more elegant, if that makes sense, and I find that I can apply as much pressure as I need or desire, as opposed to this one, which is just heavy anyway. So what I'm trying to say is, I feel that I can judge better in terms of my application using this Tamiya tool, as opposed to this one. I mean, this one's still good, it's excellent, I still use it, but I really have to be mindful of how I'm using it. And sometimes when you're modelling or scribing or sculpting, you tend to get carried away and you don't realise what damage you've done until it's far too late, and then you're into that you're into the briar patch then, where you have to unpick your arrow, which can sometimes be frustration. Excuse me, tired, tongue-tied. Yes, so it can be really quite frustrating when you just make a mistake that could have really been avoided, and I really don't like making errors if I can help it. It just frustrates me, so it just doesn't conjoin well with my, how can I put it, oh dear, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm just too self-effacing in a word. Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know. I don't want to get overly philosophical about it, but Yeah, I hate making mistakes, and I suppose there's a great many of you who hate making mistakes too, especially ones that could be avoided. Anyway, right, I have something else which is quite, you might find interesting in terms of its application, because like the ILM crew, I I improvise. Well, I suppose every model improvises, but yeah. So this is electrical copper adhesive tape, as many of you will no doubt recognize, especially if you do your own lighting and your own fixtures and fittings in that regard. So I bought this out of absolute desperation, because these engine pods, which everybody's heard me go on about now, and everybody knows what these things are by now. Right, so I have tried sculpting in Milliput, I have tried sculpting in plastic, I have tried applying the detail in brass, and none of it worked. And I really got into a bit of a snit over it, and it really weighed heavy on me in terms of, I want this detail. It's essential. It's an essential aspect of this model and of the design. And I got into the briar patch in that I just could not find a way that best suited the aesthetic of this model or my innate sensibilities. So I saw this item and I thought, well, that's really fine. It's really delicate when you take a piece off. So what I've done is cut it into very fine strips and applied it to the compound surface of the fuselage and these intakes, and that detail actually works because it's fine enough to contour the surface, but there's height in it enough to give depth and detail to it. So building that up, you can see that it provides the requisite detail, the necessary detail I need for the aesthetic of this model and the design in general. Yeah, it's working actually quite well, and maybe desperation is the mother of all invention. I don't know, but when one gets desperate, you'd be surprised how things miraculously fall into place, or you have a spontaneous idea that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So yeah, and that's what I'm going to do in terms of the 3 other engine pods. This engine pod, you can see where I've applied the detail with styrene, but it just doesn't, it's not even. It's not even, and it's not uniform. It's just messy, and I want to eliminate that. So I have to sand this flush, sand it all flush, and then apply the copper tape in fine strips, as you can see on this one. The fence, I'm going to redo some of these because they're not even, so that's me not paying attention to what I'm doing, and I'm not rushing. It's probably because I get really tired, and yeah, you get tired, it doesn't really dovetail well with trying to apply fine detail. I think in one of the earlier episodes I was talking about how I was going to apply these pipes and conduits that inlay this section of the engine pod. I have done that now. I've done that on all four. So that's basically laid in there. And they just require just a little bit more detailing and tidying up, and then they will be done. But I think I've procrastinated so much over the engine pods, wanting to get them just right. Maybe it was just necessary, but I just tried so many different techniques in terms of this application here, and after several goes, I've actually found something that I'm really quite happy with. So methinks that this is it for this return to the Prometheus build. Yeah, so yep, I think that might be it for now. So